Hi, and welcome to Berry Aftercare. Whether you're listening on the podcast or you're watching the video on the Berry Aftercare Facebook page, I welcome you. I'm Dr. Connie Stapleton, and I'm a licensed psychologist who's been working in the field of bariatric medicine for going on 20 years already. And I have a story to tell you today. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and our kids and in law kids and grandkids were at a wedding in North Carolina, and we were there for our niece's wedding. And they had family coming in from Iowa because we're all originally from Iowa. And one of the families that was there, I had known in Iowa, but hadn't seen since the bride's parents' wedding. So that's my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. So we were catching up and just chatting, and we had quite a while to sit and talk. And the woman is a court reporter. And it was interesting because she was asking what I do, and I was asking her about what she does in her court reporting job. I knew she was a court reporter, but she told me she works in the divorce court. She said, after I told her what I did working in the bariatric field, she said, let me ask you a question because I have been so fascinated in recent years. So many of the people that show up in divorce court, one or the other of the couple has had weight loss surgery. I said, wow, that's fascinating. And it's not surprising to me. And maybe it's not surprising to you because the statistics on divorce following weight loss surgery are way, way up there. Apparently, and I don't have the exact number, but approximately 70% of couples where one or the other have bariatric surgery, the marriage ends in divorce. So, what she was seeing in her job as a court reporter, having no real experience in the world of bariatric medicine or not really knowing anybody who'd had weight loss surgery, she was commenting that there seemed to be so many people in divorce court where one or the other has had weight loss surgery, which leads right into today's topic, which is how chronic diseases like obesity and addiction affect the family. The reason I chose to talk about both obesity and addiction is because the last couple of videos have been about transfer addiction, food addiction, and both obesity and addiction are chronic diseases. And it's surprising how often they go together. It's not surprising to me, actually, but it may be surprising to a lot of people. And there are many, many, many reasons for that, which we won't go into today. But if you funnel down underneath both of these two particular chronic diseases, which is not true for a lot of others, ah, there is a common denominator of shame. A lot of the people that I work with who are struggling with their weight, who are having bariatric surgery, talk openly about the shame they feel in relation to their weight. And obviously, we live in a very shame based society for people who struggle with obesity. Perfect strangers, not so perfect strangers, I should say, feel it's okay for them to shame somebody about their weight, to look, to stare, to make ugly comments. And it is absolutely not okay. Even more of a tragedy, from my perspective, is the shame that the person who struggles with the disease of obesity piles onto themselves. I've done separate videos on this and I'll do more in the future. But that is one of the core common denominators between the disease of obesity and the disease of addiction, because a lot of people who suffer from both carry a lot of shame, partly because they feel like they should be able to overcome this. These are diseases that have multiple layers of reasons for the diseases, a lot of contributing factors. And there's no way a person who has these diseases can take responsibility for all aspects of the disease, but they do, and they carry a lot of shame about it, thinking they should be able to overcome it or deal with it in a way that would make it be gone and gone forever. Well, that's just the thing about chronic diseases. They don't go away. Sometimes people will hear the words obesity is a chronic disease or addiction is a chronic disease, and they don't know really what that means. So, what a chronic disease is a disease that lasts and lasts and lasts and lasts, right? It's a chronic, ongoing. And the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, say, broadly speaking, it's a condition that lasts a year or more. It requires ongoing medical attention, and it interferes or limits the activities of a person's daily life. So chronic diseases, here's an interesting thing, because think about these three that they're listing here. These three chronic diseases, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, are the leading causes of death and disability in the United States. What do those three conditions have in common? They're all comorbidities associated with the disease of obesity, right? So obesity is a chronic disease. It's not going away. It never leaves. So when people have weight loss surgery, even though they're made aware that this is a disease, the disease of obesity doesn't go away. You can lose weight, but it doesn't mean you don't still have the disease. In other words, it may be easier for you because of your particular combination of biological factors, your particular way of living your life, a whole bunch of different conditions, other diseases you may have, medications that you take. It may be that even though you lose the weight after weight loss surgery, you're very susceptible to regain. Not fair, but it's a reality. It's a disease, it's a chronic disease. Addiction is also said to be a chronic disease. So I'm an addict. That means I will forever be an addict. Not everybody believes this. I personally do, because of the education I've had and the experiences that I've had as a therapist and in my own personal life. So when somebody has the disease of addiction, even though they may quit drinking or using some other substance, the disease is still there. It's just it's I'm going to say waiting for an opportunity to pounce, because it's not a pleasant disease, right? And we have to do a lot of work to manage our diseases. If you have the disease of obesity, you know the hard work it takes to manage the disease. In other words, to keep that weight off. There's a lot of effort put into keeping the weight off, regardless of how the weight is lost, whether it's with the help of medications, whether it's a medically assisted diet, whether it's bariatric surgery, however a person loses the weight, they have to work real hard to manage the disease of obesity. Same with addiction. There are things that I do and don't do so that I don't fall into a relapse into active addiction. So you can relapse into the disease of obesity or the disease of addiction and many other diseases. But those are the two chronic diseases I want to talk about today. And what I specifically wanted to talk about and how this relates to the story of the court reporter is how chronic diseases like obesity and addiction, these two specifically, how they affect our families. And as much as we would like to say, I didn't affect anyone with my addiction, I didn't affect anyone with my disease of obesity, it's not true. So this may be painful to listen to in some regards, because we love our families, we love our children, we love our spouses, we love our parents, our siblings, the people we care and love about. They are affected by our disease. So it's not an indictment, it's not a judgment, it's not a blame, it's a reality. So listen to this with an objective ear, and listen to the parts of this that you can do something about to limit the negative effects on your children or your spouse or your partner or your family members. And listen to it with the ears of forgiveness for yourself, for the people who came before you, because there's probably people in your life, generations ahead of you, who also had the same disease, who reacted out of their disease in ways that probably negatively affected you too. So we're just going to approach this with a compassionate perspective, saying, you don't know better. You can't do better until you know better. So maybe today you'll learn something that you can do better about. And the wonderful thing about people who love us is that if we go to them and say, I had no idea that my obesity was affecting your life in this way, and I'm really sorry that it has. They're so willing to forgive. The people who love us, they want an acknowledgement. So many of the people that I talk to for their bariatric evaluations before surgery have experienced life, and part of that life is having had some unpleasant things happen. And most people say, myself included, that an acknowledgement of what happened goes a long way in helping me to heal. An apology goes even further. So, in my own life, my children were very young when I got into treatment and started all the therapy and making the changes in our lives. And my husband participated fully in those because addiction, like obesity, is a family disease. The disease affects everybody in the family. And so the more we can get our family members on board, they don't have to change the way they're eating, they don't have to quit drinking, but to understand how the disease has affected us and how our disease and our behaviors have affected them. So it's not saying get on board and quit eating all these things with me, or get on board and you can't ever touch a drop of alcohol again. In my case, that's not it. It's just saying you're in my life, and I know that my disease has affected yours. I would like to share with you how I feel about that and hear how you feel about that. So we're going to listen to it compassionately, lovingly, knowing there was most likely not any negative intent. We don't set out to hurt the people we love, but sometimes we do. And we're going to talk about that in this podcast, on this video today. And I want you to take this information, love yourself enough and love your family members enough just to talk about it. And there will be a lot of healing for everybody in the family. So let's talk about how this happens and what exactly happens. In the families where there's the disease of obesity and the disease of addiction, a lot of times the other people in the family can be referred to as invisible victims. Now that sounds pretty awful. But the reason they say that is because the people who love us and see us struggling in whatever way they see us struggling, they suffer. They don't want to see mommy or daddy hurting because of their obesity. They don't want to see mommy or daddy, drunk on the floor. They don't want to see, people lose jobs because of their addiction. All of these things, they do suffer in silence. There's anxiety, there's fear, there's concern, there's anger, there's sadness, there's helplessness within the family members. So that's a place to start, is to realize that anybody who's in a family where there's a chronic disease, and it can be any disease, maybe if there's a child who has some sort of very bad cancer or something, everybody in the family is affected by that. Doesn't mean the kid with cancer has done anything wrong or bad or intentional. Same with those who struggle with obesity and addiction. They haven't done anything wrong by having this disease, but there are ways that the disease affects them that do negatively affect family members. So we're going to think of the people in our sphere as invisible victims, because in some ways, and you're going to hear how, they have been victims of our moods, of our actions, of our behaviors related to the obesity or the addiction. So remember, one of the things about chronic diseases, because they're ongoing, is that they're very relapse prone. In other words, you may go on a diet or lose 50 pounds or 60 pounds and you're doing great and you're feeling better and your mood's better. So that affects the family, right? They see you being positive. They see you doing more things. They feel excited for you. If you've been in the addiction world and you see a family member quit using for a while, the kids and the spouse get all excited and hopeful. But because these are diseases of relapse, then you regain the weight or you start using whatever your substance is again. And that also affects family members, right? Now, like you, they were feeling hopeful and excited, and then there's this crash. And then they're discouraged again, and they're sad, and they're angry with, the dieter or the addict. It's a chronic relapsing disease. Now, think about how, if you relapse with your obesity or addiction, how you feel about yourself. You're angry, you're hurt, you're sad, you're scared, you feel some helplessness, you feel some hopelessness, you feel like a failure, that shame kicks in. Well, guess what? Our family members almost all feel the exact same way because they were hopeful and now they feel hopeless. They were enthusiastic and now they're depressed. They were feeling better because you were feeling better. And if you're the parent in a family or you're the person with the disease, your mood affects everybody in the family. Don't think it doesn't, because it absolutely does. So you were excited and happy and doing things, and now you're discouraged and depressed and probably not your happiest self. That affects them. And so it's interesting that if you were to emotionally x-ray all the people in the family where there's a chronic relapsing disease, obesity or addiction, you would see that on the inside, it's very much the same emotions: the highs, the lows, the hopefulness, the hopelessness, the encouragement, the discouragement. And the kids and the parents or the partners also may feel like failures because they think, oh, I've been really, really doing stuff to help my mom or my dad or my brother or my sister or my grandma. I must have failed. What's wrong with me? Because children automatically think things are their fault. So if they can't fix it, they feel like they've somehow let you down. You might not believe me, but I promise you this is the case for the majority of children. All right. So if a family, who's trying to deal with a loved one who's coping with the disease of addiction or the disease of obesity, they definitely experience intense and conflicting emotions. That's what I was just talking about. And these kinds of ups and downs, this intensity, you're excited and then you're despairing, you're hopeful and then you're hopeless. These kinds of emotional roller coasters have a huge and significant toll on even the strongest of relationships. So you and your partner, you and your spouse may be in it to win it, but after so much, the highs, the lows, the sadness, the excitement, the blaming of one another, the feeling helpless to help each other, it can really take a toll. Now, most of the time, the family members of the person with the disease, they understand on one level that you're not trying to hurt them. When you're moody because you've gained 5 pounds and you're kind of snippy and snappy at them, there's a part of them that knows you don't mean to be crabby. There's a part of you that knows you don't want to take it out on them, but you still do sometimes. And there's also a part of them that's angry about that. Because if all of a sudden mom's doing great and then she relapses with food and now she's miserable, when mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. That's kind of that's been made into a joke, but there is a lot of truth to that. It's a stereotype, but a lot of stereotypes come about because there is some truth to it. So our moods are, meaning the person with the disease. I'm the addict. Maybe you're the person with the disease of obesity. Our moods greatly affect the people around us because we often act out how we feel on other people. The age old tale of the person who's ticked off at their boss who comes home, takes it out on the partner and the kids, and then the kids take it out on the dog. It's just that downhill effect, but it's true. It's true. If you get on the scale and all of a sudden you're mad and hopeless and bitter or feel like you're a failure, you're not going to be your best self to the people in your family, and they feel that. So on one hand, they know you're not trying to hurt them intentionally, but on the other hand, they're hurt, they're angry, and they have every right and every reason to be. But because especially our children adore and love us, They have a lot of empathy, and they want to give you support, encouragement. That's not the job of our children. You'll be okay, mommy. We'll make it work this time. I'll help you. I'll do it with you. That is not the job of a child, and that is a huge emotional burden on a child. We don't want to burden our children, but we do unintentionally when we become despairing or we become, hopeless, or we talk badly about ourselves, or we talk about being a failure, or those kinds of things terrify, hurt, and anger our loved ones. All right, so just be aware of that. All right. So, also, a lot of people who are caught up in the disease of obesity or caught up in the disease of addiction are very other minded, meaning, and I don't mean other people, I mean other substance. I've heard from a lot of people that they spend 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of their day thinking about food. What am I going to have for breakfast? What's going to be my snack? What do I feel like I want now? Where am I going to go to get this? Same with an addiction. When do I get to start drinking? Or where am I going to get the Coke? Or where am I going to, how am I going to get to the dealer? Or a lot of thought put into these diseases. When a lot of our thought and our mind power and our mindfulness is placed on food or a substance of abuse or addiction, we're not fully present for other people. So you're thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, you're daydreaming about an excess of food or what you would like to have or where you're going to get it, and your kid's trying to get your attention for some homework or tell you about something that's upsetting them, or your spouse is trying to have a conversation with you and you're only half there. They feel it. That is a negative effect on our family members because what they end up feeling is unimportant. Don't bother talking to mommy. She's in one of her daydreams and they don't know what you're spacing off about, but it may be about food or it may be about getting your drug. We are not fully present, and that is not fair to our family members. And you may think, no, that's never happened. But I think if we're all honest with ourselves, and if we've been in the active disease of obesity or addiction, we know that that's a true statement. We know that there are times we are preoccupied with our thoughts of getting our fix, whether it's food or whatever it is. So we have a huge impact on our children. And children who are in a single parent home and the parent has the disease of obesity or the disease of addiction are even worse off. It's going to play a role in their development. I assure you, this isn't a two-party or one-party family parent home. Because if there's one parent, they don't have anybody else to turn to. So maybe if mom or dad, whoever the parent in the home is depressed and, or passed out or crabby because they gained 5 pounds and they're all into their own self, they're self-absorbed with their disease, the children don't have anybody else to go to. And then they start feeling resentful and they start feeling lonely and they start feeling unimportant. Even though none of that is true, the disease is getting the primary attention, not the people in our lives. And we're hurting them and we don't mean to be, but we are. Okay. People who have diseases like obesity and addiction are preoccupied. And that's what I was just talking about. We're preoccupied with thoughts of our food, our drug, when we're going to get them, where we're going to get them, what we would like, those kinds of things. We're preoccupied with getting out of the house to go get them. We're preoccupied with cooking them or obtaining them rather than focusing on the child. We also become irresponsible in other ways. Maybe your physical size prevents you from doing the laundry, prevents you from doing the dishes, or prevents you from going to your children's events. Maybe your obsession with your addiction keeps you stuck home or keeps you away from the family because you're out drinking or with your using friends. And our family members get resentful, and they have every right to do so, even though you have a disease of obesity that prevents you physically from being able to be as mobile as you would like. While they have compassion for that, they also have anger about it. They also have tremendous fear. What if you die? What if you fall? What if you choke? What if you can't get help? What if you can't breathe? What if all the what ifs? Children lay awake at night thinking about those things. Believe me, they do. I grew up as that child, and you have children who are growing up with that as well. Children lose trust because the addict or the person with obesity feels guilty, and they'll say, well, I'll take you here, or I'll take you there, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. But maybe when the time comes to do that, you can't physically do it. Again, it may be your size, it may be you're not feeling well, it may be you're hungover, it may be whatever it is. But the lack of commitment and follow through can lead to distrust. Yeah, I'll be at your game. There's a no-show. Yeah, I'll be at your piano recital. There's a no-show. So there's disappointment, anger, resentment that starts to build. Not to mention the amount of stress our significant others, our partners, our spouses, our parents, our siblings, our children have, because they have additional duties, maybe around the house. They're doing those dishes we can't do. They're doing that laundry because maybe one of the parents is passed out on the couch from a hangover, or the parent who's too large to be able to, do the laundry isn't able to do it. So there's a lot of stress on these kids, and not to mention, like I said, the fear about your health, the fear about are you going to live, the fear about are you going to be able to take me, the fear about will you be there with me. There's a lot of this. So again, think about this from a compassionate stance for yourself and for the other people. The purpose of this, again, is not to shame or humiliate or embarrass, but to say, listen, when you have surgery, let your hopes for your family and the healing of your family be one of the motivating factors for you to keep doing what needs to be done so that you keep that weight off or you stay out of another relapse with addiction. Let it be motivating so you stay on track with your health. I choose health, the mantra everywhere, because we don't want to hurt our children, our loved ones, our parents, or worry them or stress them or cause them more responsibility than they need to have because of our illness. And then there's the emotional abuse. Well, I don't emotionally abuse my children. Not intentionally, you don't. But when I was in the early stages of getting clean and sober and learning all these things, if I was withdrawing from a substance and I didn't feel good, you darn right, I'd be like, oh, you just got to leave me alone. Stop fighting. Stop yelling. To the point where I'm yelling at the kids. That's emotional abuse if it's done on a consistent basis. Or if you are depressed about your weight and maybe you just take it out on your kids. Leave me alone, can't you see? you know if our bad mood rubs off on, or we treat others in a less than pleasant way because we're miserable, that's emotional abuse. And I hate to say it, but it's important that we recognize it for what it is so that we can be responsible for making amends and working on not doing that anymore. There's a tremendous amount of fear and confusion on the part of our family members because, they're walking on eggshells around us anyway because they don't know if we're going to be in a good mood or a bad mood. What did the scale say that morning? That's going to determine if mom's in a good mood or a bad mood. Did dad stop at the bar on the way home? He's going to be in a good mood, or is he going to be cranky when he gets home? These kinds of things make for an unpredictable home. They make for a home where kids are scared, where partners are like, I don't want to be around you anymore. I never know what to expect. I can't do this for you. They feel helpless. They feel hopeless. And your reactions are, you're on edge. If you gave into a binge on the way home and now you're crabby and you come home and it's like, oh God, here she comes. I can tell just by the way her face looks, it's going to be a bad night, right? We have this tremendous, tremendous effect. And it is everybody in our path. It's the people in our work environments. It's the people that we're married to, that we are dating, that raised us, that are our siblings. But most of all, my heart goes out for the children because the children just want to make it better for you. They would do anything they could to make it better for you. And so they will take on the burden of the responsibility and think every time you're in a bad mood, it's their fault. Or every time you relapse into unhealthy eating, lack of exercise, addiction, it's their fault because they couldn't make it better for you. And that's just the kind of the way it is. So the home environments are often real tricky. And kids will take on different roles. I talked to a woman who had 5 kids in the home. The father was not in the home. The mother, who was morbidly obese and had very limited mobility, would stay in her bed all day and bark commands at the rest of the family, at the kids. And one of the children in particular took on the role of bathing the woman, getting her the food. And if she didn't get the mom the food that she wanted, the mom would yell at the kid. And the kid, of course, wants to please the mom. And so she gets her all of this unhealthy food. And then she feels guilty herself. And she's afraid that she's going to kill her mother and all of these things. So there's a caretaker. And then there's a kid who's trying to make the family look good. And they go out and they try to be the hero, like, hey, things are okay in my house. Look at me. I'm doing well in school. I'm the captain of the team. I'm the this, I'm the that. You know, I'm the person people think are going to be the most likely to succeed. And then they go off to college and they kill themselves because there's too much stress, too much stress, too much pressure to make the family appear as though there aren't struggles going on inside. Then there's the kid who's the scapegoat. My husband was his mother's scapegoat. His mother had all kinds of emotional issues. And for some reason, out of the 6 kids, she took it out on my husband when he was a kid. And all the kids were aware of it. Everybody knew that she took her frustrations out on my husband. He was the scapegoat. And then there's usually somebody who tries to make things lighter in the household. These are the mascots, the funny ones. A lot of comedians, professional comedians, were the mascot in their home. They tried to make things lighter in the home because things were so chaotic and temperamental and people were walking on eggshells. They tried to be funny to lighten things up a little bit. And they may go on to be professional comedians, but a lot of times they come from very dysfunctional family homes if you listen to their real life stories. Kids also feel, and partners and spouses and family members and siblings, sometimes they're embarrassed of the person with the addiction or the person with the weight. They love them, but maybe the kids at school are calling the parent names. Maybe they're making fun of their parent. And so the child's embarrassed. They're angry at the other kids, but they're also embarrassed. Or maybe they're embarrassed when you show up somewhere because people point and stare. And then they feel guilty because they don't want to be embarrassed because they love you, they adore you, they treasure you. Kids oftentimes blame themselves, which I've been talking about. Sometimes the kids don't do well in school because they've been laying awake at night worried. They're worried about your health. They're worried about your mood. They're worried about how can they fix it? How can they make it better for you? So sometimes, it's like, what's the matter with this kid? They're not doing well at school. Well, maybe they're not doing well at school because they're not sleeping well, because maybe their feelings are hurt because you didn't show up to their thing, even though you said they would. Or maybe their feelings are hurt because you yelled at them all night because you were feeling bad about yourself. This can get better. I guarantee you that it will not get better with surgery alone. Weight loss surgery does not fix any issues we had going on before we have surgery. There's a temporary spike in what looks like self-esteem for a lot of people after surgery. And this is coming back to this high divorce rate. So a lot of times in those first 2 years, when people are feeling themselves, you know what I'm talking about? You lose the weight, you're looking good, you start setting some boundaries, you go doing things that you wish you had done when you were a teenager, but you didn't have the offers to do them. So now people are going out, they're sowing their wild oats, and families can fall apart this way, right? because you're feeling yourself. You're like, I am going to go strut my stuff because I never got to strut my stuff before. And I get that. And this doesn't happen with everybody. This happens with maybe a small portion of people. But for those people who are affected by this person after they lose weight and they're feeling themselves and they think, look at me, and they go divorce their spouse. They're like, you know what? I'm going to go out and do the things I never got to do when I was younger, or I'm going to go out and, you know, find me somebody different. So there is a lot of divorce. And I think that if people would settle down, because after that honeymoon period, things level off a little bit. And the highs that come from losing weight after weight loss surgery kind of fade a little bit. And the healthier the individual in terms of their mental and emotional health, they just settle into a new life as a healthier person. There aren't a lot of disruptions. People who aren't very healthy on the inside, who really have low self-esteem, but now it looks like they have self-esteem, but they really don't. It's just, I'm feeling good for the first time ever, and it's looking like self-esteem. They're going to come back to their regular sense of self-esteem at some point because it doesn't truly increase just because of weight loss. If there are issues before surgery, there are going to be the same issues after surgery. They just might go on vacation for a couple of years, but they will be back and you will be dealing with them. So it's so important, if you want a healthy family and you want your family to weather this significant weight loss journey in as healthy a way as possible, look into these ways that chronic diseases affect family members and give yourself permission to be honest. How have my moods affected the people in my family? How have my, preoccupations with food or whatever it is affected my family? How has my inability to do things within the home or outside of the home affected my family? And then just go to the family and say, listen, I'm taking stock of how this disease of obesity has affected everybody. And I want to talk about it. And I want to give you permission to let me know if you're sad or hurt or angry or if you've been scared, because it makes sense to me that you would be. Invite the conversation. Be the person who's not defensive. Well, I would never have said something like that. I would never have taken my anger out on somebody else. I would never have taken my sadness or my depression out on somebody else in my family. Well, yeah, you probably did, even if you didn't mean to. So just accept it and then go to your family and say, let's have a family talk about this. It never occurred to me before, but now I'm aware that maybe you were scared about my health, or maybe you thought you could try to fix it, or maybe that you thought it was your job to fix it. It never was. I'm the adult. It's my job. I don't want to affect you if I'm in a bad mood or angry about my weight or whatever. So let's just have an honest discussion about it. And I'm going to ask you to forgive me for the things that I have done that have negatively affected you. And they will. They absolutely will. Here's where families get into trouble when you're trying to overcome these kinds of things. It's when the person who has the disease denies that they ever did those things or denies that their disease has had a negative effect on the family. It's not, it's a healing process. It's a family disease. Addiction, obesity, they're family diseases because there's not a person in the household that is not affected by them. It's not it's not, like I said, it's not a shaming message, but it's a fact. But you can overcome it. You can overcome it. I have gone to my children, I can't tell you how many times, and they're in their mid to late 30s at this point, and they were 4 and 6 when I went into treatment. And at different times over the years, I would talk to them about it because they were at different stages of development. And a lot of it they don't even remember. But just because I went through treatment or just because you had weight loss surgery doesn't mean you're going to be a completely different person. And all of a sudden, you're not going to get upset if you get on the scale. You're not going to have a relapse with food. And then you're going to be crabby again or upset or whatever. So it doesn't go away just because you had weight loss surgery. This is a lifetime of working on improvement. But in that time, it's been 30 some years for me. During those 30 years, I've still hurt my kids because I didn't have healthy communication skills before I went into treatment. I had anger issues before I went into treatment. Doesn't mean they vanished because I quit drinking, right? I've had to work on these over the years. So every time I take out anger on them, I come back and I say, that was unfair of me. I am so sorry. And that's how they learn to trust you again. And that's how, if you give them permission to come to you with their concerns, they can come to you and say, I'm concerned, Mom, because I see you eating things you're not supposed to be eating, because they've gotten permission. That is very, very healthy and a very loving thing to be able to do. But if they're going to come to you and say, I'm worried about you, and you're going to snap their head off, well, they're not going to come to you with things like that. So make it a home where they have permission to talk to you and you will accept how they feel. You might not agree with it, but it's their feeling. And so just say, well, I'm going to need to think about that. And we can talk about that more down the road. I hear you saying that you're upset. I hear you saying that you're worried. Let me process that a little bit and come back to you and we'll talk about it more. Or I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings when I said that. I had no right to say that to you. Whatever it is, deal with it in the present. Work toward having the healthiest family you can have. But the only way to do that is not be defensive about the ways your disease has affected your family in some unhealthy ways. All right, I will pick up with that later in the week and we'll talk about healthy communication. We'll talk about being open-minded. We'll talk about not being reactive, and we'll pick up from there. So again, there's a lot of divorce after weight loss surgery. I would encourage people to wait a good 3 years following bariatric surgery to follow through with divorce. There's too much going on. There's way too much going on with a person and a couple and a family during that time to make those kinds of life-altering decisions, unless there's some kind of significant abuse or something of that nature. So get some therapy, get some family therapy, people. It's great. It's a wonderful gift you can give to yourself. Me and my family got lots of family therapy, lots of couples therapy, lots of individual therapy. And I didn't care how much it cost us. We had zero money. We paid and paid and paid on that for years and years and years. Money well spent. Myself, my spouse, our children, definitely worth it. Definitely worth the hurt, the pain, the sadness that came before all of the healing. But the healing has been tremendous. So I encourage you, be courageous, be brave, do the work it takes. But chronic diseases oftentimes cause every person in our family some pain. So just talk about it, let it be real, and start the healing process. Thanks for being with me. Would love to hear your comments, would love to hear anything that you would like to hear about. And please go to www.berryaftercare.com and let me know what's going on. Thanks so much. Make it a great one. It's your health, your responsibility this day and every day.